The galaxy was quiet. It had been quiet for 30,000 years. Commander Kale stood in his crystal tower, looking out at the stars through walls that were clear as glass but stronger than any metal. The tower floated in space above a blue planet where millions of creatures lived and worked. They all obeyed the Thylaxi Empire, just like every other world in the galaxy. Kale was tall and thin, with skin that glowed soft blue in the dark. His people, the Thylaxi, had ruled the galaxy for so long that most other species had forgotten there was ever a time before them. They were made of pure energy, which made them think they were better than everyone else. They could move through walls, fly without ships, and shoot beams of light from their hands. To them, other species were just animals that could talk. The Crystal Tower was one of thousands that watched over the galaxy. Each tower had sensors that could see and hear everything that happened on the worlds below. If anyone tried to build weapons or ships that were too advanced, the towers would stop them. If anyone tried to fight back against the Thylaxi, the towers would destroy them. This was how peace was kept in the galaxy. But today, something was different. Kale's assistant, a young Thylaxi named Mortai, rushed into the command room. His blue glow was flickering, which meant he was scared. "Commander," he said, his voice shaking, "we have readings from Sector 7741. Something big is coming." Kyle turned away from the window and floated over to the main control panel. The panel was made of the same crystal as the walls, but it could show pictures and numbers in the air above it. When Kale touched it, the whole room filled with a map of the galaxy. Most of the map was green, showing peaceful worlds under Thylaxi control. But at the edge of the map, there were red dots moving toward the center. "What am I looking at?" Kale asked. Mortai waved his hand and the red dots grew bigger. They looked like ships, but not like any ships Kale had ever seen. They were huge, some as big as moons. They moved in perfect lines like soldiers marching. But the strangest thing was that the sensors could not tell what they were made of. "The energy readings make no sense," Mortai said. "These ships seem to be there and not there at the same time. Our sensors can see them, but they cannot tell us what they are made of or how they work." Kyle studied the moving dots. In all his years as a commander, he had never seen anything like this. The Thylaxi had the best technology in the galaxy. Their sensors could look inside atoms and count the thoughts in a creature's mind. But these ships were invisible to their deepest scans. "How many ships?" Kale asked. "We count at least 10,000 in the first group," Mortai said. "But there might be more behind them that we cannot see." 10,000 ships. That was more than the entire Thylaxi war fleet. Kyle felt something he had not felt in centuries, fear. "Where did they come from?" he asked. "The edge of known space, past the dead zones where no one goes. They just appeared and started moving toward us." The dead zones. Kale knew about those areas. They were places where stars had died long ago, leaving nothing but empty space and radiation. No one lived there because nothing could live there. The Thylaxi had sent scouts to explore those areas thousands of years ago, but the scouts had found nothing but old, broken worlds. "Send a message to the High Command," Kale ordered. "Tell them we need more watchers in this sector, and send scouts to meet these ships. We need to know what they want." Mortai nodded and began working at another crystal panel. His fingers danced through the light, sending messages across the galaxy at the speed of thought. Within minutes, replies came back. The High Command was sending more watchers. Scout ships were being prepared. But as they worked, the red dots on the map kept moving. They moved faster than any ship should be able to move, faster than the laws of physics said was possible. They moved like they were not really ships at all, but something else pretending to be ships. Hours passed. The scout ships reached the edge of Sector 7741 and sent their reports back to Kale's tower. But the reports made no sense. "The scouts say the ships are there, but they cannot touch them," Mortai reported. "When they try to scan them, their beams go right through. When they try to send messages, no one answers. It is like the ships are ghosts." Kale floated closer to the map. The red dots were now much closer to the inhabited worlds. In a few days, they would reach the outer colonies where millions of creatures lived and worked under Thylaxi rule. "What about the other towers?" Kale asked. "What do they see?" Mortai checked the reports from other sectors. His blue glow grew dimmer as he read. "Commander, it is not just our sector. There are similar readings all around the galaxy. Hundreds of these ghost fleets are moving toward the center from every direction." The room fell silent. Kale had been a commander for over 2,000 years. He had seen rebellions rise and fall, He had watched the Thylaxi destroy species that tried to challenge them, but he had never seen anything that made him feel so small and helpless. The Thylaxi Empire controlled over 1 million worlds. They had energy weapons that could destroy planets. They had ships that could travel from one end of the galaxy to the other in days. They had ruled for so long that most creatures in the galaxy thought they were gods. But now something was coming that made their most powerful weapons useless. Something that could move through space like it owned it. Something that came from the dead places where nothing was supposed to live. "Commander," Mortai said quietly, "what if these are not ships at all? What if they are something else?" Kale did not answer. He stared at the map, watching the red dots move closer and closer to the heart of the Empire. For the first time in 30,000 years, the Thylaxi did not know what they were facing. For the first time in their long rule, they were not the most powerful force in the galaxy. Deep in space, the mysterious fleets continued their silent approach. They moved with purpose, like they knew exactly where they were going and what they would find when they got there. They moved like they were coming home. And in his crystal tower, Commander Kale watched and waited, knowing that everything was about to change. The age of Thylaxi rule was ending, even if he did not yet know what would take its place. The galaxy held its breath. Something ancient was stirring in the dark between the stars, and soon the whole universe would learn what it meant to be truly powerless. Daeho Kim wiped the sweat from his face as he watched the mining machines dig deeper into the asteroid. The machines were loud and dirty, nothing like the clean energy tools the Thylaxi used. But they worked, and that was all that mattered to his bosses. Daeho was human, which meant he was at the bottom of the galaxy's ladder. Humans were good for hard work and nothing else, according to the Thylaxi. They were too emotional, too violent, too stupid to be trusted with real technology. That was why they worked in the mines and factories while other species got to live in the clean cities above. The asteroid mining station was home to 10,000 humans. They had been born here, just like their parents and grandparents before them. None of them had ever seen Earth, the planet their ancestors came from. Earth was just a story now, a myth about a beautiful blue world that might never have existed at all. Daeho called Young Mi, one of the younger workers. "The machines are acting strange again." Daeho walked over to where Young Mi was standing. She was pointing at one of the big digging machines. Its lights were flashing in patterns they had never seen before, and it was making sounds that did not match any of the error codes in their manual. "Turn it off," Daeho said. "We will check the power cells." But before Young Mi could reach the controls, all the machines stopped at once. The asteroid station became quiet for the first time in decades. The humans looked around in confusion. Even the air recycling systems had gone silent. Then the lights went out. In the darkness, someone screamed. Emergency lights came on a few seconds later, casting red shadows on the walls. Daeho tried to stay calm, but his heart was beating fast. Power failures in space meant death if they could not fix them quickly. "Everyone stay where you are," he called out. "Check your breathing masks. Make sure the seals are tight." But as he spoke, something impossible happened. Light began to shine through the walls of the station. Not electric light, but something else. Something that made the metal walls glow like they were made of glass. The humans stopped moving and stared. The light was beautiful, like sunlight, but softer. It did not hurt their eyes, even though it was bright enough to see by. And as they watched, shapes began to appear in the light. Ships. Huge ships that looked like they were made of liquid silver and starlight. They moved through space without making any sound, and they were so big that the asteroid station looked like a toy next to them. "What are those?" Young Mi whispered. Daeho did not answer because he did not know. He had never seen ships like these before. The Thylaxi ships were made of crystal and energy. The Vorthan ships looked like metal clouds. The other species had ships that matched their nature. But these ships looked like dreams made real. One of the ships came closer to the station. It was shaped like a long, smooth stone, but it sparkled like it was covered in diamonds. As it approached, the humans could see that it was not solid. Parts of it seemed to fade in and out like it was only half real. Then a voice spoke in the station. It came from everywhere at once, from the walls and the air and inside their heads. But the strangest thing was that it spoke in a language none of them had heard for thousands of years. It spoke in Old Earth. "Children of Earth," the voice said. And somehow every human understood the words, even though they had never learned that language. "We have come home." The humans looked at each other with wide eyes. Old Earth was the language their ancestors had spoken before they were scattered across the galaxy. It was in some of their old songs and stories, but no one alive could speak it anymore. "Do not be afraid," the voice continued. "We are your family. We are what you will become." More ships appeared around the asteroid, hundreds of them all glowing with that soft light, and as the humans watched, figures began to appear on the station. They walked through the walls like the walls were not there. The figures looked human, but they were different. They were taller and moved with perfect grace. Their skin glowed with a gentle light, and their eyes were deep and kind. They wore clothes that seemed to be made of light itself, flowing around them like water. One of the figures approached Daeho. She was a woman with long black hair and eyes that held the wisdom of ages. When she smiled, Daeho felt a warmth in his chest that he had never felt before. "Hello, Daeho," she said in perfect Korean, though her lips barely moved. "My name is Bora Lee. I am the admiral of this fleet. We have come to take you home." "Home?" Daeho asked. His voice came out as a whisper. "Yes," Bora said. "Home to the stars. Home to your true heritage. You have been slaves long enough." Around the station, other glowing figures were talking to the human workers. They spoke to each person in their own language, calling them by names they had never told anyone. They knew everything about the humans, their fears, their dreams, their secret hopes for a better life. "Who are you?" Young Mai asked one of the figures. "We are what humans became when we left the galaxy long ago," the figure replied. "We are your brothers and sisters who learned to live beyond the limits of flesh and metal. We are your future." As the figures spoke, changes began to happen to the humans. They felt stronger, smarter, more alive than ever before. The dull ache that came from breathing recycled air disappeared. The tiredness from years of hard work melted away. Colors looked brighter, sounds became clearer, and they could feel the life force of every person around them. "What is happening to us?" Daeho asked. "Your true nature is awakening," Bora said. "You were never meant to be miners and laborers. You are the children of the species that built the first cities among the stars. Your ancestors were explorers, scientists, artists, and dreamers. That blood still flows in your veins." Suddenly, alarms began to sound throughout the station. The Thylaxi had noticed the strange ships and were coming to investigate. Through the station's windows, the humans could see crystal ships approaching fast. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never met anything they could not defeat. "The Thylaxi are coming," Daeho said. "They will destroy your ships," Bora smiled. "Let them try." The first Thylaxi ship fired its energy weapons at the human fleet. Beams of pure light shot through space, weapons that could cut through mountains and boil oceans. But when the beams hit the human ships, they passed right through like the ships were not there. More Thylaxi ships arrived and opened fire. The space around the asteroid lit up with deadly energy, but none of it touched the human vessels. The ships existed in a way that made normal weapons useless against them. "How?" Daeho asked in amazement. "We learned to exist between dimensions," Bora explained. "We are here and not here at the same time. We can touch this reality when we choose to, but nothing in this reality can touch us unless we allow it." The Thylaxi ships tried everything. They used gravity weapons, time distortion fields, and reality warping devices. Nothing worked. The human ships floated in space like they owned it, completely untouchable. Then one of the human ships did something that made the Thylaxi stop shooting. It reached out with beams of its own, but these beams did not destroy. Instead, they touched the Thylaxi ships and simply made them stop working. The energy beings inside found themselves trapped in metal shells, unable to use their powers. "We do not wish to hurt anyone," Bora announced, and her voice reached every ship in the area. "But we will not allow our children to remain in chains. The age of slavery is over." On the asteroid station, the human workers felt the last of their old limitations fall away. They could see through walls now, could feel the thoughts of their friends, could understand technologies that had been mysteries to them just minutes before. "What happens now?" Daeho asked. Bora looked at him with eyes full of love and pride. "Now we show the galaxy what humans really are. Now we reveal the truth that has been hidden for 50,000 years. Now we take our place as the guardians of all life." The human fleet began to move, carrying the awakened workers with them. They left the asteroid behind like they were leaving an old, outgrown shell. Ahead of them lay the galaxy, vast and full of wonders, waiting to learn that the species they had treated as animals were actually their long-lost teachers and protectors. The children of Earth were going home at last. Captain Minho Park stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the Vorthan prison planet grow larger on the main screen. The planet was gray and ugly, with tall metal towers sticking up like needles from its surface. Inside those towers, 20 million humans lived in cages, working day and night to process raw materials for their Vorthon masters. The Vorthon were gas beings who lived in floating cities above the planet. They thought solid matter was disgusting, which made humans perfect slaves. Humans could touch the dirty metal and stone that the Vorthon needed, but did not want to handle themselves. "Sir," said Lieutenant Hana Cho from the navigation station, "we are approaching the defense grid. The Vorthon have energy shields around the entire planet." Minho smiled. "Let them keep their shields. We do not need to go around them." The Vorthon defense fleet was already moving to intercept them. 50 large ships made of swirling gas and metal moved between the human fleet and the planet. Each ship was armed with weapons that could tear apart solid matter at the atomic level. "Warning, unknown vessels," came a message from the Vorthon fleet commander. "You are entering restricted space. Turn back immediately or be destroyed." Minho opened a communication channel. "This is Captain Park of the Human Liberation Fleet. We are here to collect our people. Stand down and no harm will come to you." The Vorthon commander's laughter sounded like wind through broken glass. "Humans, you dare threaten us? Your primitive species should be grateful we allow you to live at all." "Hana," Minho said quietly, "show them what primitive means." Hana nodded and touched the controls. The human ship began to phase shift. To the watching Vorthon, it looked like the ship was becoming transparent, like a ghost. Then it started moving forward straight toward the planet. The Vorthon fleet opened fire. Energy beams that could crack moons shot toward the human ship, but the beams passed right through it like it was not there. The ship continued its approach, completely unaffected by the most powerful weapons in the Vorthon arsenal. "Impossible," the Vorthon commander whispered. "What are you?" "We are what we always were," Minho replied. "You just never bothered to look." The human ship reached the planet's energy shield and passed through it like it was made of air. The Vorthon watched in shock as more human ships did the same thing. An entire fleet of impossible vessels surrounded their world. On the surface, the human prisoners felt something change. The air in their cages began to glow with soft light. The metal walls became warm to the touch, and then figures began to appear inside the prison towers. Humans walked through the walls like they were made of water, but these were not ordinary humans. They glowed with inner light and moved with the grace of dancers. Their clothes seemed to be made of starlight, and their eyes held wisdom that came from seeing the universe as it really was. "Brothers and sisters," one of the glowing figures said to the prisoners, "we have come to take you home." The prisoners stared in amazement. They had been born in these cages. Their parents and grandparents had lived here too. They had never seen the sky or breathed free air. The idea of home was just a dream from old stories. "Who are you?" asked an old prisoner named Tai Jin. "I'm Engineer Cho," the figure replied. "I was once like you, working in the mines of asteroid station K-47. But our true family found me and showed me what I really am. Now I am here to show you." As she spoke, Cho began to explain things that the prisoners had never understood. She told them about the ancestors who had built the first starships, who had mapped the galaxy when it was young, who had created technologies that seemed like magic to other species. "But how is this possible?" Taejin asked. "The Vorthon say we are too stupid for advanced technology." Cho smiled. "Watch and learn." She touched the wall of the prison cell and her hand began to glow. Where she touched, the metal changed. It became soft like clay, then crystal clear like glass, then harder than diamond. In seconds, she had reshaped the wall into a doorway. "Matter is just energy moving slowly," she explained. "When you understand this, you can change matter into anything you want. This is basic human science." The prisoners walked through the new doorway in wonder. Outside their cells, more human liberators were working throughout the prison towers. They moved through walls, reshaped metal with their bare hands, and spoke to the prisoners with voices that could be heard in the heart as well as the ears. Above the planet, the Vorthon fleet tried desperately to stop the liberation. They fired every weapon they had at the human ships. They called for help from other Vorthon fleets. They even tried to crash their own ships into the human vessels. Nothing worked. The human ships existed in a state that made normal physics meaningless. They could be touched when they chose to be touched, but nothing could touch them when they did not allow it. "This is impossible," the Vorthon commander said to his officers. "How can they do this?" His science officer, a being of swirling purple gas, checked the readings again. Sir, according to our instruments, they exist in multiple dimensional phases at the same time. They are here in our reality, but they are also somewhere else that we cannot detect. What kind of technology can do that? Sir, I do not think it is technology at all. I think it is evolution. On the planet's surface, the human prisoners were learning about their heritage. Engineer Cho and the other liberators showed them how to see beyond the normal spectrum of light, how to feel the energy patterns that connected all living things, how to move their consciousness outside their physical bodies. 50,000 years ago, Cho explained to a group of amazed prisoners, humanity faced a choice. The galaxy was at war and every species was trying to destroy every other species. We could have stayed and fought, but our ancestors chose a different path. What path? Asked Young Su, a young prisoner who had never seen sunlight before. They chose to transcend, Cho said. They learned to exist beyond the limits of matter and energy. They became something new, something that could not be hurt by weapons or trapped by walls. They became what you are meant to become. As she spoke, the prisoners felt changes happening to them. Their bodies became lighter, stronger, more alive. They could see colors that had no names, hear sounds that spoke directly to their souls, feel the life force of every creature on the planet. But why did they leave us behind? Taejin asked. They did not leave you behind, Cho replied. They left you here to grow, to learn, to become strong in your own way. Every human who has ever lived in slavery has been adding to the strength of our species. Your suffering was not meaningless. It was preparation. Above them, the human fleet continued its work. Captain Park's ship moved through the Vorthan cities, and wherever it passed, human slaves found their cages opened and their chains broken. The ship existed in a state where it could choose what to interact with. It could walk through Vorthan buildings without disturbing them, but it could touch human bonds and make them disappear. The Vorthan tried to understand what they were seeing. Their scientists worked frantically to analyze the human technology, but they found nothing to analyze. The human abilities were not based on machines or devices. They came from the humans themselves, from changes in their bodies and minds that seemed to break every law of physics. Sir, the Vorthan science officer reported, I have been studying their energy patterns. They are not using technology at all. They have become technology. They are living beings who exist outside normal space-time. The fleet commander felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. The Vorthan had ruled through superior technology for thousands of years. But these humans had transcended technology altogether. They had become something that could not be fought with weapons or contained with barriers. Down on the planet, the last of the human prisoners were being freed. 20 million people who had lived their entire lives in cages were walking out into the light of their own power. They moved with new grace, saw with new eyes, and understood their place in the universe for the first time. What happens now? Young Su asked Engineer Cho. Now we show the rest of the galaxy who we really are, she replied. We have been hiding for 50,000 years, watching and waiting. But the time for hiding is over. It is time for humanity to take its proper place as the guardians of all life. The human fleet began to move away from the Vorthan world, carrying the liberated prisoners with them. But they left behind something that would change the Vorthan forever. The knowledge that they were not the advanced species they thought they were. Somewhere in the galaxy, there were beings who had transcended everything the Vorthan considered impossible. The revolution was spreading, one world at a time. Admiral Borelli stood in the command center of her flagship as it approached the galactic core. Around her, holographic displays showed the positions of human fleets throughout the galaxy. Each fleet had completed its mission. Millions of human slaves had been freed, and the ruling species were beginning to understand that everything they thought they knew was wrong. But the real revelation was about to begin. Admiral, said Colonel Jin Woo, song from the archaeology station. We are detecting the first beacon. Bora nodded. The beacons were ancient human devices, hidden throughout the galaxy 50,000 years ago. They had been waiting all this time for the right signal to activate them. Now, as the human fleets approached the galactic center, the beacons were waking up. Show me, Bora said. The main display changed to show a star system near the core. It looked normal at first, a yellow star with several planets. But as they watched, something impossible happened. A new structure appeared in the space between the star and its closest planet. It was huge, bigger than most moons. It looked like a crystal flower made of light and metal, with petals that reached out toward the star. As it fully materialized, energy began to flow between it and the star. The star's light became brighter and more focused. "What is it?" asked Captain Soon-Young Kim, who was serving as Bora's tactical officer. "A stellar regulator," Jin-Woo explained. "Our ancestors built them to control how stars burn. This one has been making sure that star burns at exactly the right rate to support life on its planets." More beacons appeared throughout the galaxy. Some were wrapped around black holes controlling their gravity fields. Others floated in empty space, creating stable zones where new stars could form safely. The largest ones surrounded entire star clusters, managing the energy flow between hundreds of suns. "How many are there?" Soon-Young asked. Jin-Woo checked his readings. "Preliminary scans show over 10 million devices. They form a network that covers the entire galaxy. Admiral, our ancestors did not just leave the galaxy. They turned the whole galaxy into a machine." Bora felt a mix of pride and sadness. Pride in what her ancestors had achieved and sadness for what the galaxy had lost when it forgot its true history. The revelation was having effects throughout the galaxy. On worlds ruled by the energy-based species, scientists were detecting the human devices and trying to understand what they meant. On Thylaxi worlds, panic was spreading as their leaders realized their empire existed inside a system they had never known about. Commander Kale received the reports in his crystal tower. The readings made no sense. Ancient structures were appearing everywhere, all of them built with technology far beyond anything the Thylaxi could create. And they were all clearly designed by the same species. "Sir," Mortai reported, "the devices are active throughout our territory. They appear to be controlling stellar formation, planetary orbits, even the flow of time in some regions." Kale stared at the data. "How long have they been there?" "The energy signatures suggest they are at least 50,000 years old." "Sir, they have been there longer than our civilization has existed." The implications hit Kale like a physical blow. The Thylaxi had always believed they were the first species to achieve true mastery over the galaxy. But these devices proved that someone else had been there first. Someone with technology that made Thylaxi science look like children playing with toys. On the human flagship, Admiral Lee was preparing for the most important moment of her mission. Deep in the galactic core, hidden behind layers of energy and distorted space-time, lay the central command station. It was the hub that controlled all the other devices, the master key to the galaxy's hidden systems. "Admiral," Jin-Woo said, "we are approaching the core barrier." The barrier was invisible to most sensors, but the human ships could see it clearly. It was a wall of folded space-time that surrounded the galactic center like a soap bubble. Inside the barrier, space and time moved differently. A journey that should take years happened in minutes, and energies that should have torn apart planets flowed as gently as rivers. The human fleet passed through the barrier without slowing down. Their ships existed in a state that made such obstacles meaningless. But as they entered the protected zone, they found they were not alone. The Thylaxi Emperor Zixtal was waiting for them. His ship was the largest crystal structure ever built, a flying palace that held the wisdom and power of 30,000 years of rule. He had come to the galactic core to find answers, and now he faced the beings who could give them to him. "I am Emperor Zixtal of the Thylaxi," he announced as the human fleet surrounded his ship. "I demand to know what you are and what you want with my galaxy." Admiral Lee materialized on his bridge without warning. She simply appeared in the middle of his command center, ignoring all the shields and barriers that should have kept her out. The Thylaxi guards raised their energy weapons, but Lee held up one hand and the weapon stopped working. "Your galaxy?" she said calmly. "This galaxy belongs to no one, Emperor. It never did." Zixtal was 9 feet tall and made of pure energy contained in a crystal shell. He had ruled over trillions of beings and commanded fleets that could destroy solar systems. But looking at this human woman, he felt small and frightened. "What are you?" he whispered. "I am what your species could have become if you had chosen to grow instead of to rule," Lee replied. "I am Admiral Bora Lee of the human race, and I am here to show you the truth about this galaxy." She gestured, and the walls of the throne room became transparent. Outside, the galactic core spread before them in all its glory. But now Zixtal could see things that had been hidden before. The core was not a natural formation. It was a vast machine, built around the central black hole to harness its energy and distribute it throughout the galaxy. 50,000 years ago, Lee explained, this galaxy was dying. The species that lived here were destroying each other and burning out the stars. My ancestors could have conquered everyone and ruled through force. Instead, they chose to heal. More structures became visible as Lee spoke. Massive rings around the black hole that controlled its gravity. Energy collectors that gathered power from dying stars and sent it to young worlds that needed it. Computational networks that predicted where new life would emerge and prepared the conditions for it to thrive. They built this system to nurture life. Lee continued. Every stable star, every habitable planet, every successful civilization owes its existence to human engineering. Your empire, your technology, your very evolution was guided by systems my ancestors created. Zixtal felt his worldview crumbling. But we are energy beings. We transcended matter thousands of years ago. We are the most advanced species in the galaxy. Lee smiled sadly. You are energy beings because the system was designed to guide you in that direction. Your transcendence was not evolution, it was education. You learned to manipulate energy because that was the lesson the galaxy was built to teach you. She showed him more of the hidden truth. The crystal technology the Thylaxi were so proud of had been developed because certain minerals were placed in their solar system at exactly the right time. Their energy manipulation abilities had grown strong because the stellar conditions around their homeworld had been carefully adjusted to encourage that development. Every species in this galaxy has been guided, Lee said. The Vorthon became gas beings because that was what their worlds were designed to produce. The Zepti became crystalline because their system was set up to favor that evolution. Each species developed the abilities they needed to play their part in the galactic community. But why? Zixtal asked. Why did your ancestors do this? Because they understood something that you have forgotten, Lee replied. Life is precious. Intelligence is rare. And diversity makes everyone stronger. They built this galaxy to be a garden where every form of life could flourish. The revelation was spreading throughout the galaxy. On every world, the hidden systems were revealing themselves. Species that had thought they were advanced were discovering they were students in a school they had never known existed. The galaxy was not a collection of competing empires. It was a single, vast organism designed to nurture and protect all life within it. But the most shocking revelation was still to come. There is one more thing you need to understand, Lee told the Emperor. The systems that guided your evolution also limited it. Your species have been living in a protected environment, like children in a nursery, but now it is time for you to grow up. She touched the wall of the throne room and Zixtal felt something change. The energy patterns that had surrounded him all his life became visible. He could see the limits that had been placed on his power, the boundaries that had kept his species from growing too far too fast. And then gently, Lee removed those limits. Zixtal gasped as new abilities flooded through him. He could see across dimensions, could touch the thoughts of beings on distant worlds, could manipulate matter and energy in ways he had never imagined possible. His crystal shell became transparent, then dissolved entirely. He existed as pure consciousness, connected to everything in the galaxy. This is what my ancestors wanted for everyone, Lee said. Not conquest, not slavery, but growth. The chance for every species to reach its full potential. Throughout the galaxy, the same awakening was happening. 6 months had passed since the Great Awakening. The galaxy was no longer the same place it had been when the human fleets first appeared at its edges. Where once there had been separate empires ruling over enslaved peoples, now there was something new, a community of equals working together toward a common future. Commander Byung-ho Yoon stood in the center of the Galactic Development Council, watching representatives from hundreds of species discuss their plans for the future. The council met in a space station that existed in multiple dimensions at once, allowing beings of different physical natures to interact safely. The Thylaxi were there, but they no longer glowed with the cold light of pure energy. After their awakening, they had learned to take solid form when needed, and their leader, former Emperor Zixtal, now worked as an equal partner with species he had once ruled. The Vorthon had also transformed. Where once they had been formless gas clouds, they now appeared as beautiful patterns of colored light that could solidify into any shape they needed. Their representative, a being called Morzen, was discussing plans to help newly awakened species learn to control their expanded abilities. The key, Morzen was saying, is patience. When a species first discovers it can manipulate matter and energy, The temptation is to use these abilities without wisdom. We must teach them gradually as the humans taught us. Byung-ho nodded. In the past 6 months, he had seen species make incredible progress once their artificial limits were removed. But he had also seen the dangers of too much power given too quickly. Some worlds had needed human intervention to prevent newly awakened beings from accidentally destroying themselves or others. The humans have prepared training programs, said Zixtal. Each species will have guides to help them adapt to their new abilities safely. The transformation had not been without conflict. Some species had refused to accept the new reality. A few had tried to use their awakened abilities to conquer their neighbors, just as they had done in the old days. But they had quickly learned that conquest was no longer possible. When every being in the galaxy could exist in multiple dimensions and manipulate reality at the quantum level, traditional warfare became meaningless. You could not enslave someone who could walk through walls and reshape matter with their thoughts. You could not destroy someone who existed partially outside normal space-time. The result was the first true peace the galaxy had ever known. Dae-ho Kim, the former mining foreman, now served as a cultural liaison between humans and other species. His job was to help the newly awakened understand their place in the galactic community. Today he was meeting with a group of Jepti who had recently learned to move beyond their crystalline forms. The hardest part, one of the Jepti said, is understanding that we are not separate from each other anymore. When I touch your mind, I feel your thoughts as if they were my own. Dae-ho smiled. That was hard for us too at first. When humans first awakened to our true nature, we struggled with the idea that all consciousness is connected, but you will learn as we did that this connection makes us stronger, not weaker. The Jepti, whose name was approximately translatable as Crystal Song, tilted his head in confusion. But how do you maintain your individual identity when you can feel everyone else's thoughts? By choosing what to share and what to keep private, Dae-ho explained. The connection allows us to understand each other perfectly when we need to, but we can still maintain our personal boundaries when we want to be alone with our thoughts. This was one of the most important lessons the awakened galaxy was learning. With their new abilities came new responsibilities. The power to touch another being's mind came with the duty to respect their privacy. The ability to reshape matter came with the obligation to consider how those changes might affect others. Throughout the galaxy, schools were being established to teach these lessons. Former slaves became teachers, showing their former masters how to use power responsibly. Species that had never worked together were now collaborating on projects that would have been impossible in the old galaxy. On a world that had once been a Vorthon industrial planet, humans and Vorthon worked together to restore the damaged ecosystem. The Vorthon used their new abilities to clean the poisoned atmosphere, while the humans guided the regrowth of forests and oceans. What had once been a dead world was becoming a paradise. Young Mi, the former mining worker, was leading one of these restoration projects. She stood on a hilltop overlooking a valley where new trees were growing at an accelerated rate, guided by conscious will rather than just natural processes. When I was in the mines, she told her Vorthon partner, a being called Wind Through Stars, I used to dream about seeing a real forest. I had heard stories about Earth, about worlds covered in green growing things, but I never thought I would see anything like that myself. Wind Through Stars flowed around her in patterns of silver and blue light. When I ruled this world, he replied, I never thought about what we had destroyed to build our cities. I thought progress meant leaving nature behind. Now I understand that true progress means working with nature, not against it. They watched as a group of young beings from various species played together in the new forest. The children had been born after the awakening, and to them the ability to fly through dimensions and speak with the minds of trees was as natural as breathing. They represented the future of the galaxy, a generation that would never know the limitations their parents had lived with. Admiral Bora Lee materialized beside them, her form shimmering with the soft light that marked the most advanced humans. She had been visiting restoration projects throughout the galaxy, checking on the progress and offering guidance where needed. How are things going here? She asked. Better than we hoped, Youngmi replied. The ecosystem is responding well to conscious guidance. We should have a fully restored biosphere within another few months. Bora nodded, pleased. And the cooperation between species? Excellent, said Wind Through Stars. Working together toward a common goal has taught us more about each other than centuries of diplomacy ever could. This was happening throughout the galaxy. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years were learning to work together. The artificial barriers that had kept them separate were gone, and they were discovering that their differences made them stronger when combined. But perhaps the most important change was happening among the humans themselves. For 50,000 years, the advanced humans had watched from outside the galaxy, intervening only when necessary to prevent total catastrophe. They had been guardians and protectors, but also isolated and alone. Now, reunited with their enslaved cousins and working alongside the awakened galactic community, they were remembering what it meant to be part of something larger than themselves. Captain Minho Park stood on the bridge of his ship, but he was no longer alone. His crew now included beings from dozens of species, all working together to explore the regions beyond the galaxy. Their mission was to find other galaxies where similar awakenings might be needed. "Sir," reported his navigation officer, a Thylaxi named Light Between Worlds, "we are detecting artificial energy patterns in the Andromeda galaxy. The signatures match what our ancestors left here before the awakening." Minho felt a surge of excitement. If there were human installations in Andromeda, it meant their ancestors had seeded other galaxies with the same gifts they had given to this one. There might be billions of beings in other galaxies still waiting for their own awakening. "Set course for Andromeda," he ordered. "It is time to see how far our family's influence extends." Back in the home galaxy, the Galactic Development Council was making plans for the far future. With their expanded abilities, the member species could see possibilities that had been invisible before. They could predict where new life would emerge, could guide the evolution of young civilizations, could even create new forms of existence that had never been tried before. "We have a responsibility," Zixtal said to the assembled representatives. "We were given these gifts not just for ourselves, but so we could pass them on to others. We must become what the humans were for us, guardians and teachers for those who come after." The council agreed. They would send exploration fleets to other galaxies, seeking out civilizations that might be ready for their own awakening. They would build new networks of guidance systems, but with improvements based on what they had learned from the human example, and they would continue to grow and evolve themselves, pushing the boundaries of what was possible and discovering new ways to exist and create. As the meeting ended, Byung-ho walked to the observation deck of the station. Through the transparent walls, he could see the galaxy spread out before him. But now he could also see the hidden structures that connected everything, the flow of consciousness between worlds, the networks of energy that linked every living being, the vast web of possibility that stretched from the galactic core to the farthest edges of space. 50,000 years ago, his ancestors had made a choice. They could have conquered the galaxy through force, ruling as gods over lesser species. Instead, they had chosen to serve, to guide, to nurture and protect. Now it was his generation's turn to make that same choice.